I found my mother-in-law in my dead father's bedroom. She was measuring the windows for new curtains. The urn with his ashes was still in my car. There was already a sticker on the door, Linda, master bedroom. And my husband was standing beside her, telling her I was too broken to make decisions. I didn't scream. Not right away. At first, I just stared at the measuring tape in Linda's hands. She calmly stretched it from one side of the window to the other, as if this house already belonged to her. As if my father had not died 3 days ago. As if I had not spent the last night beside his hospital bed, holding his cold fingers. I was 37. I thought I already knew what betrayal looked like. I was wrong. Because real betrayal does not always arrive with shouting. Sometimes it stands in your father's old bedroom, holding a measuring tape and discussing curtain colors. Linda, I said quietly. What are you doing? She didn't even flinch. She just turned to me with the kind of face people make when you walk into your own house without knocking. Olivia, sweetheart, we're just trying to bring some order to the chaos. That word caught in my chest. Chaos. To her, my grief was chaos. My father's death was an inconvenience. His house, his things, his whole life were just problems that needed to be sorted quickly into rooms. I looked at Mark. He was standing near the dresser, hands in his pockets. The black ribbon from the funeral was still pinned to his shirt. Yesterday, he had held my shoulders beside the grave. Yesterday, he had whispered that I wasn't alone. And today, he was letting his mother choose the master bedroom. Mark, I said. Why is her name on the door? He gave a heavy sigh. He always did that when he wanted to make me look like the problem. Live, don't start. You're not in the right state of mind. Something inside me went cold. Because I had heard that phrase before. He said it when I wanted to see the bills. He said it when I begged him not to take out another loan for his business. He said it when I asked why his sister Denise had been living off our money for 6 months. You're not in the right state of mind. A convenient phrase. It made me weak before I even had the chance to speak. I stepped into the room. Furniture catalogs were spread across my father's bed. His old blue blanket had been pushed onto the floor. On the nightstand, where he always kept his glasses, sat Linda's coffee cup with lipstick on the rim. That little detail hurt more than everything else. Get this off his bed, I said. Linda raised her eyebrows. Olivia, we all understand that you're grieving. But the house is far too large for one person. Mark said you admitted that yourself. I slowly turned to him. You told her that? Mark rubbed the back of his neck. His eyes slid away. And in that second, I understood. They had not come here to help. They already had a plan. From downstairs came a woman's laugh. I recognized Denise's voice, Mark's sister. Then something thudded heavily, like someone moving a box. I left the room and went down the stairs. In the living room, Denise was standing by my father's old cabinet. 3 piles of his belongings were spread across the floor. One had a note that said, donate. Another said, sell. The third said, keep. In the sell pile was my father's watch. The same watch he had worn for 20 years. I picked it up from the floor. Who gave you permission to touch this? Denise froze with a vase in her hands. God, Olivia. We're just sorting things. This is not trash. My voice cracked, but I held myself together. I could not fall apart in front of them. Because that was exactly what they were waiting for. So they could say I was unstable. That I couldn't handle anything. That Mark needed to take control. Linda came down the stairs behind me. No one is trying to hurt you. But your father was very sick. And we don't know how clearly he was thinking when he signed those papers. I froze. What papers? The room went silent. Even Denise lowered the vase. Mark spoke quickly. Mom means the will. I tightened my hand around the watch. The will leaves the house to me. Maybe, Linda said. But that still needs to be verified. Maybe? She said it as if my father had not looked me in the eyes 1 week before he died. As if he had not squeezed my hand and whispered, don't let Mark speak for you. Back then, I hadn't understood. I thought he was confused from the medication. Now those words returned to me with a heavy chill. I looked at Mark. Where's the folder with the documents? He answered too quickly. I don't know. That was when I truly got scared. Not because of Linda. Not because of Denise. But because of how fast he lied. I walked past them toward my father's office. Mark followed me, almost running. Olivia, stop. You're only going to make this worse. I opened the office door. Inside, it smelled like dust, leather, and my father. His lamp stood on the desk. Beside it was the metal box he had always kept locked. Now it was open. Empty. My knees nearly gave out. I knew what was supposed to be inside. A copy of the will. The key to the safe. Bank documents. The letter my father had promised to leave only for me. Mark stopped behind me. He was not pretending to be calm anymore. You shouldn't have come in here, he said. I slowly leaned toward the box. At the very bottom, beneath the scratched velvet lining, the corner of a folded paper was sticking out. I pulled it free with trembling fingers. The handwriting was my father's. Crooked. Weak. But definitely his. There was only one sentence on the page. Liv, if Mark brought them into the house before the will reading, run to the attorney immediately. I stopped breathing. And behind me, Mark quietly locked the office door. Mark turned the lock so softly, I almost didn't hear it. But I felt it. That tiny click moved through my body like a warning. I stood there with my father's note in my hand, staring at the office door, while my husband blocked the only way out. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The house behind the door was quiet now. No voices. No footsteps. No moving boxes. Just Mark breathing behind me. And me, trying not to show him that my hands were shaking. Open the door, I said. My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Mark didn't move. Instead, he looked at the note in my hand. Your father was paranoid near the end, he said. That was his first mistake. Not the lie itself. The speed of it. He had that sentence ready. Like he had practiced it before I ever found the note. I folded the paper once and slipped it into my coat pocket. Mark watched every movement. His jaw tightened. Liv, he said, softer now. You're grieving. You're scared. And that note is only going to make you spiral. I almost laughed. Spiral. Another one of his favorite words. He used it any time I asked too many questions. When his business account was overdrawn. When I found cash withdrawals I didn't recognize. When his sister called him at midnight and he stepped outside to answer. I used to think marriage meant trusting the person beside you. Now I understood something colder. Trust can become a blindfold when someone learns how to tie it slowly. Where are the documents? I asked. He sighed and looked at the ceiling. You're not listening. I am listening. No, he said. You're reacting. Then he stepped closer. Not enough to touch me. Just enough to remind me he was bigger. The office suddenly felt smaller. My father's desk was behind me. His bookshelf pressed against my left side. The window faced the back lawn, wide and gray under a cloudy Pennsylvania afternoon. For one wild second, I looked at that window and wondered if I could open it. Mark noticed. His eyes flicked there too. That scared me more than anything he had said. Don't do something dramatic, he said. My pulse hit hard in my throat. I want to leave this room. And I want you to calm down. There it was. The sentence that told me everything. He didn't want peace. He wanted control. I reached into my pocket slowly, pretending to adjust the note. My phone was there too. I slid my thumb across the screen and prayed Face ID would catch me from that angle. It did. I kept my eyes on Mark. Then I pressed the side button 3 times. Emergency call. My phone vibrated silently in my pocket. Mark's gaze dropped. What are you doing? Nothing. He moved fast. I moved faster. I stepped backward, grabbed the brass letter opener from my father's desk, and held it between us. It was ridiculous, really. A grieving woman in a black dress, holding a dull letter opener like a weapon. But Mark stopped. For the first time that day, he looked unsure. Are you serious? He whispered. I said, open the door. His face changed. The soft husband disappeared. The patient one. The tired one. The one who told people I was fragile because he loved me. What stood in front of me now was a stranger wearing his skin. You don't understand what you're doing, he said. No, Mark. I think I finally do. A loud knock hit the office door. Both of us froze. Mark. Linda called from the hallway. Is everything okay? He did not answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on mine. Then he smiled. Not warmly. Not kindly. Just enough to warn me. She's having a panic attack, he called back. Give us a minute. My stomach dropped. He was building the story in real time. And everyone outside that door would believe him. Because I was the daughter who had just lost her father. The wife with swollen eyes. The woman standing in an office with a shaking hand and a letter opener. I lowered the blade just slightly. Not because I trusted him. Because I understood the trap. If I looked unstable, he won. So I took one breath. Then another. And I said clearly, loud enough for Linda to hear through the door. Mark locked me in here after I found my father's note. Silence. Then Linda said nothing. Not one word. That silence answered a question I had not even asked yet. She knew. Maybe not everything. But enough. Mark's face hardened. You just made a huge mistake, he said. Before he could move, my phone spoke from my pocket. A flat, calm voice filled the room. 911, what is your emergency? Mark went pale. I pulled the phone out slowly and raised it between us. My name is Olivia Hart, I said, still looking at my husband. I'm at my late father's house in Lancaster County. My husband locked me in his office after I found a note telling me to contact the attorney. Mark reached for the phone. I stepped back and lifted the letter opener again. Do not touch me. For the first time, my voice did not crack. The operator asked if there were weapons. I looked at Mark. No, I said. But I'm afraid he has taken legal documents from the house. Mark laughed once, sharp and ugly. You're insane. The word landed between us. Insane. That was the final label. The one he had probably saved for the police, the lawyer, maybe even a judge. I looked at the locked door, then at the empty metal box. And something inside me became very still. I was done defending my sanity to people who benefited from my silence. Footsteps moved in the hallway. Linda whispered something. Denise answered, too low to hear. Then came another sound. A floorboard creaked near the back stairs. Someone else was in the house. Not Linda. Not Denise. Not Mark. A man's voice called from downstairs. Mrs. Hart? This is Daniel Reeves, your father's attorney. Mark's face changed instantly. All the color drained from it. Then the attorney said the words that made my knees go weak. I need you to come downstairs. Your father recorded a video before he died. The moment I heard Daniel Reeves' voice, Mark stepped away from the door. Not far. Just enough to pretend he had never blocked me. Just enough to become the calm husband again. That scared me more than the lock. Because men like Mark did not panic loudly. They adjusted their faces. They changed the lighting. They waited for other people to walk in so they could perform concern. I kept the phone in my hand while he unlocked the office door. Linda stood in the hallway with her arms crossed. Denise was behind her, holding my father's vase like she still planned to keep it. Neither of them looked surprised. That told me more than any confession could have. Daniel Reeves stood at the bottom of the staircase in a dark coat, silver hair damp from the rain. I remembered him from childhood. He had been my father's attorney for as long as I could remember, the kind of man who sent Christmas cards with embossed lettering and never forgot a name. But now his face looked tense. Not sad. Tense. Olivia, he said, are you all right? Before I could answer, Mark walked past me. She's overwhelmed, he said smoothly. Her grief is turning into suspicion. I think we should all slow down. Daniel looked at him for one long second. Then he looked back at me. Did you call 911? Yes, I said. Mark gave a bitter laugh. She misunderstood a private conversation. Daniel's eyes moved to the locked office door. Then to the note in my hand. May I see that? I hesitated. Only for a second. But in that second, Mark reached toward me. Daniel's voice cut through the hall. Do not touch her. Everything went still. Even Linda blinked. Mark's hand dropped to his side. I walked down the stairs and handed Daniel the note. He read it once. Then again. His mouth tightened, but he did not look surprised. That was when my stomach sank. You knew about this? I asked. Daniel folded the paper carefully. Your father was afraid something like this might happen. Linda scoffed. Oh, please. George was confused half the time. Daniel turned to her. No, Mrs. Keller. He was dying. That is not the same as being confused. Linda's face flushed. For the first time since I walked in, she had no quick answer. A patrol car pulled into the driveway, red and blue lights washing across the front windows. Denise backed away from the living room piles as if the police could see the word "cell" from outside. Daniel lowered his voice. "Olivia, your father asked me to bring a recording if anyone entered this house before the official reading of the will." I felt Mark go rigid beside me. "What recording?" he asked. Daniel did not answer him. He opened his leather briefcase and took out a small laptop. My whole body felt numb. I had imagined a will, a bank folder, maybe a warning letter. Not a video. Not my father's face coming back from the dead to explain why my husband was afraid. The officers knocked. Daniel let them in and explained just enough to keep everyone in place. Mark immediately turned polite. Linda became offended. Denise suddenly claimed she was only helping with clutter. I stood in the living room beside my father's chair. The one nobody had dared put a sticker on yet. Daniel placed the laptop on the coffee table. Then he clicked play. My father appeared on screen. Thinner than I wanted to remember. Wrapped in his old brown cardigan. Sitting right here in this very room. For a moment, I forgot everyone else existed. "Liv," he said, his voice rough but clear. "If you are watching this, then I was right to worry." My knees weakened. Daniel gently guided me into the chair. On the screen, my father took a slow breath. "I need you to listen carefully. Mark came to me 6 months ago asking for money. Not a loan. He wanted me to sign over part of the property as collateral for his business debt." I turned to Mark. His face had gone white. My father continued. "When I refused, he told me you were unstable. He said you were bad with money. He said you would lose the house within a year unless he controlled it." The room blurred. Not because I was crying. Because every memory rearranged itself at once. Every argument about bills. Every missing statement. Every time Mark said he was protecting me. He had been building a case against me while sleeping beside me. My father leaned closer to the camera. "I changed the locks on the document cabinet after that. I also changed my will. Everything goes to Olivia. The house. The accounts. The land behind the creek. No one else has authority unless she gives it freely, in writing, with Daniel present." Linda made a sharp sound. "This is ridiculous." Daniel paused the video and looked at the officers. "That statement was recorded in my office with 2 witnesses." Mark spoke quickly. He was manipulated. Olivia turned him against me. I stared at him. And for the first time in years, I did not feel the urge to explain myself. The video resumed. My father's voice softened. "Liv, there is one more thing. I am sorry I did not tell you sooner. 3 weeks before this recording, I found a second mortgage application on this house." My breath stopped. Daniel's face darkened. My father looked directly into the camera. "It had your signature on it." I whispered no. Mark's eyes dropped to the floor. My father's voice cracked. "But, baby, I knew it wasn't yours." The room went silent. Even the officers stopped writing. Then my father said the sentence that split my marriage open forever. "I hired a forensic examiner. Mark forged your name." For a moment, no one moved. The words stayed in the room like smoke. "Mark forged your name." I stared at the screen, but I could feel him beside me. My husband. The man who knew how I took my coffee. The man who rubbed my shoulders when my father started chemo. The man who once cried in a hospital parking lot and told me he could not imagine life without me. That same man had signed my name on a mortgage application. On my father's house. While my father was dying. "No," I whispered. Not because I did not believe it. Because part of me still wanted one clean corner of my life. One place where the betrayal stopped. Mark's voice came quickly. "Olivia, don't let them twist this." I slowly turned toward him. He was looking only at me now. Not the officers. Not Daniel. Not his mother. Me. Because he knew exactly which buttons to press. "I was trying to save us," he said. "Your father hated me. He never respected what I was building." "What you were building?" I asked. My voice sounded strange. Flat. Almost empty. Mark stepped forward, but one officer raised a hand. He stopped. "Liv, The business was close, he said. One more investment and we would have been fine. I didn't want to scare you. I looked at Daniel. How much? Daniel's face softened in a way that frightened me. Olivia. How much debt? He opened a folder from his briefcase. I saw printed pages. Bank names. Dates. Numbers lined up like little knives. Approximately $480,000, he said. My ears started ringing. Denise gasped, but not like she was shocked. More like she was angry he had said it out loud. Linda sat down hard on the sofa. I looked from one face to the next. And suddenly, the whole room changed. They were not confused relatives. They were not grieving family. They were people standing inside the asset they needed to survive. That was the moment I understood. They had not come to comfort me. They had come to occupy collateral. I pressed my hand against my stomach. This is crazy, I said. Then I said it again, quieter. This is actually crazy. Because the house had never been about memories for them. Not the staircase where my father carried me after I broke my ankle. Not the kitchen where he taught me to make pancakes. Not the porch where he told me my mother was leaving, then held me until the sun went down. To them, it was square footage. A rescue plan. A bag of money with walls. Daniel turned the page. The second mortgage did not go through, he said. Your father caught it before closing. Mark looked at him sharply. Daniel kept his voice steady. But someone attempted to revive the application last week. My whole body went cold. Last week? I said. My father had been barely conscious last week. He was on oxygen. He could not lift a spoon without help. Daniel looked directly at Mark. The lender received an updated financial package and a request to expedite before Mr. Hart's death certificate was filed. One of the officers looked up. Mark's face hardened. That is not proof of anything. No, Daniel said. But the email came from your business account. Linda stood suddenly. Daniel, enough. This family is grieving. Daniel closed the folder. Mrs. Keller, this is no longer a family disagreement. The words landed hard. A family disagreement. That was how people like Linda dressed up theft. A misunderstanding. A difficult season. A private matter. Anything except the truth. My phone buzzed in my hand. The 911 call had ended sometime during the video. Now a text appeared from an unknown number. I almost ignored it. Then I saw the first line. Mrs. Hart, your father told me to contact you if Daniel played the video. I frowned. Below it was a name. Rachel Monroe. Former assistant to Mark Evans. My breath caught. Mark saw my face change. What is that? He asked. I locked the screen. Nothing. His eyes narrowed. For years, he had trained me to answer too quickly. To explain every look, every silence, every feeling. This time, I gave him nothing. Daniel noticed. He stepped a little closer to me. Olivia, do you want to step outside with the officers? Before I could answer, Denise snapped. Oh my God, stop acting like she's some helpless victim. Mark did everything for her. She never understood money. She never understood pressure. I looked at her. There it was again. The story. The one they had been telling each other long before today. Poor Mark. Fragile Olivia. Difficult father. Big house. Necessary decisions. A lie becomes easier to believe when everyone in the room benefits from it. You knew, I said. Denise's mouth opened, then closed. Linda answered for her. We knew Mark was under stress. No, I said. You knew he needed this house. Linda's face tightened. Your father should have helped his son-in-law. My father owed him nothing. He owed you stability. That one almost broke me. Because for a second, I heard the old version of myself. The wife who would have felt guilty. The woman who would have wondered if maybe love meant rescuing everyone. Even people who were quietly drowning you. Then Daniel placed another document on the table. This is why George insisted on the video. I looked down. It was a copy of a handwritten letter. Not to me. To Mark. My father's writing was shakier here. But still clear enough. I know about the woman in Allentown. I know about the apartment. I know Olivia's money paid for both. The room tilted. I gripped the edge of the chair. What woman? I asked. No one spoke. Mark closed his eyes. Just for 1 second. but it was enough. My heart did something worse than break. It went quiet. Daniel's voice lowered. Your father hired a private investigator after the mortgage attempt. I stared at Mark. All the late nights. All the business trips. All the times he came home smelling like hotel soap and blamed traffic. There had been another woman. Another life. And my money had helped pay for it. I felt tears rise, but they did not fall. Not yet. Because grief had too many doors now. My father. My marriage. My home. My past. Everything was collapsing at once. Then my phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel Monroe. Do not let Mark leave with his laptop. The proof is in a folder called Blue Creek. I read it twice. Blue Creek. That was the name of the land behind my father's house. The land Daniel had mentioned in the will. I looked up slowly. Mark was no longer beside the sofa. He was near the hallway. His hand was already reaching for his coat. And inside that coat pocket, I saw the hard silver corner of his laptop. Mark saw my eyes drop to his coat pocket. For half a second, neither of us moved. Then he turned toward the front door. Not running. That would have made him look guilty. He walked with that controlled, measured pace he used in public, the one that said he was the reasonable person in the room. Mark, I said. Stop. He did not look back. One officer stepped toward him. Sir, we need you to stay inside for now. Mark gave him a tired smile. I'm not under arrest. I'm going to get some air. Daniel moved before I did. That laptop may contain evidence of fraud. Mark laughed softly. This is my personal property. Then he looked at me. And there it was again. The old warning in his eyes. Don't embarrass me. Don't make this worse. Don't force me to show people who you really are. For years, that look had worked. It had made me apologize in restaurants. Made me lower my voice at family dinners. Made me swallow questions because peace felt safer than truth. But this was my father's house. And I was done being managed inside it. His assistant just texted me, I said. Mark's face changed. It was small, almost nothing. But I saw it. So did Daniel. Linda stood up quickly. What assistant? Mark snapped, Mom. That one word told the whole room enough. Denise put a hand over her mouth. Not because she felt sorry for me. Because the plan was slipping. The officer looked at me. Ma'am, can you show me the message? I handed him my phone. My fingers felt numb, but my mind was suddenly clear. Rachel Monroe. Blue Creek. Do not let Mark leave with his laptop. The officer read it, then passed it to his partner. Mark's voice sharpened. This is absurd. A disgruntled former employee sends a random text, and now you're treating me like a criminal. Daniel looked at him calmly. No, Mark. Your forged mortgage application started that. Mark's mask cracked. For the first time, he looked truly angry. Not scared. Angry. Like I had stolen something from him by finding out. He reached for the door anyway. The younger officer stepped in front of him. Sir, put the bag down. Mark did not move. The house went so quiet, I could hear the rain ticking against the windows. Then Linda did something I will never forget. She stepped between Mark and the officer. My son is a good man, she said. He made mistakes because this family abandoned him. This family. She meant me. My dead father. The people who had not handed them everything fast enough. I stared at her and finally saw the shape of it. Mark had not become this way alone. He had been protected into it. Excused into it. Loved without limits until everyone else became responsible for his consequences. Move aside, ma'am, the officer said. Linda did not move. Instead, she turned to me. Her eyes were wet now, but not with grief. With rage. You have no idea what pressure does to a man. Something inside me burned cold. I know what it does to a woman, I said. It makes her quiet for too long. Daniel stepped closer to the officer and spoke low. I could not hear everything. I caught only pieces. Forgery. Potential financial crime. Attempted removal of evidence. The officer nodded once, then reached toward Mark's coat. Mark jerked back. Don't touch me. That was when the laptop slipped. It hit the hardwood floor with a hard metallic crack. The screen corner flashed silver under his coat. Everyone saw it, including Denise. Her face crumpled. Mark, she whispered. He looked at her with pure fury. You said you deleted the emails. The words came out before he could catch them. The whole room froze. Denise went pale. Linda closed her eyes. And I felt my stomach drop into a place deeper than pain. Because it was not just Mark. Denise had known more than she admitted. Maybe Linda had too. The officer picked up the laptop and placed it on the entry table. Mark started talking fast. Too fast. She doesn't know what she's saying. She helped with scheduling. That's all. This has nothing to do with Olivia. Daniel's voice cut through him. What emails, Denise? Denise shook her head. I didn't know he forged anything. Mark turned on her. Shut up. That word landed like a slap. Not on her. On me. Because I had heard it before. In our kitchen at midnight. In the car after dinner with his investors. In whispers when I cried too long and he needed me presentable. Denise began to cry. I thought it was just temporary, she said. He said the land would sell before anyone noticed. Daniel's face hardened. What land? She looked at me, then at the floor. The creek property. Blue Creek. My father's land. The strip behind the house where the trees bent over the water. The place where Dad built me a wooden swing when I was 8. The land he refused to sell even when developers came with glossy folders and big smiles. My chest tightened. Daniel opened his briefcase again, but his hands were slower now. As if he already knew the next piece would hurt. George suspected a developer was involved, he said. I looked at Mark. He was breathing hard now. Gone was the calm husband. Gone was the grieving son-in-law. All that remained was a cornered man standing in a house he had already spent in his head. My phone rang. Unknown number. Everyone looked at it. I answered with the speaker on. A woman's voice came through, tight and shaking. Mrs. Hart? It's Rachel Monroe. My throat closed. I'm here. I'm outside, she said. Your father asked me to come if Mark tried to leave. Mark lunged toward the phone. The officer caught his arm. For 1 second, the room exploded. Linda screamed his name. Denise backed into the wall. The laptop slid across the table. And I stood there, holding the phone, hearing rain and Rachel's breath on the other end. Then Rachel said the sentence that made every head turn toward the front door. Olivia, I have the original Blue Creek contract. And Mark was not the only person who signed it. Rachel's words came through the phone like a match in gasoline. Mark was not the only person who signed it. Nobody breathed. Even the rain against the windows seemed to fade. Mark struggled once against the officer's grip, then stopped. That scared me more than the lunge. Because the moment Rachel said there was another signature, his anger turned into calculation. He looked at his mother. Linda looked away. I saw it. So did Daniel. So did Denise, who suddenly pressed both hands to her mouth. Rachel, I said, my voice barely steady, come inside. Mark snapped his head toward me. No. The officer tightened his hand on Mark's arm. Sir, do not move. A minute later, the front door opened. Rachel Monroe stepped into my father's house with rain on her coat and fear on her face. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with red eyes and a brown envelope clutched to her chest. She looked at Mark first, then at me. I'm sorry, she said. Those 2 words almost broke me. Not because I knew her. Because she sounded like someone who had been carrying my life in a folder. Daniel took the envelope carefully. Rachel did not let go right away. Mr. Hart told me to give it only to Olivia or you, she said. Daniel nodded. I understand. She released it. Linda suddenly stood. This is harassment, she said. This woman was fired. She's bitter. Rachel looked at her, and something hardened in her face. I quit after I realized what your son was doing. Mark laughed under his breath. You stole company documents. No, Rachel said. I copied evidence after you told me to backdate Olivia's consent forms. The room went still again. My name sounded ugly in that sentence. Like something forged. Like a key cut without permission. Daniel opened the envelope. Inside were printed emails, a draft contract, a notary page, and a map of the Blue Creek land. I recognized the shape of it immediately. The creek curved like a silver hook behind the house. My father used to say that land had memory. Now people had tried to turn it into an escape route. Daniel's eyes moved down the pages, then stopped. His face changed. He looked at Linda. "Mrs. Keller," he said slowly, "why is your signature here?" My ears rang. I turned to her. Linda stood perfectly still. Not shocked. Caught. Denise whispered, "Mom." Linda's mouth opened, but no sound came. For the first time since I met her, she looked old. Not elegant. Not powerful. Just old and frightened. Mark closed his eyes. And that was the answer. Daniel placed the contract on the entry table. I stepped closer. There it was. Mark Evans. Linda Keller. And beneath them, in a twisted version of my name, Olivia Hart Evans. My stomach turned. "That is not my signature," I said. Rachel nodded quickly. "It wasn't supposed to be final yet. Mark said you would sign after the funeral, once you were too tired to fight." Too tired to fight. I looked around the room. At the piles of my father's things. At the sticker on the staircase railing. At Denise crying beside the wall. At Linda pretending grief had made her a thief. And I finally understood the cruelty of their timing. They had not chosen the days after my father's death because they were careless. They chose them because they thought sorrow would make me weak. Linda found her voice. "I was trying to save my son." The words came out raw. Almost human. But not enough. "You signed my name away to save him?" I asked. "I signed nothing for you." "No," I said. "You signed beside the lie." Her face tightened. "You do not understand motherhood." That old guilt rose in me. Sharp. Familiar. The guilt of not being forgiving enough. Kind enough. Useful enough. Then I thought of my father's hand in mine. His voice, thin but clear. "Don't let Mark speak for you." So I did not soften. "I understand that love without honesty destroys everyone around it," I said. Linda flinched. Mark looked at me like he hated the sound of my strength. The officer asked Rachel a few more questions. Daniel handed over copies of the papers. Words moved through the room around me. Fraud. Forgery. Conspiracy. Attempted transfer. I heard them all, but they felt distant. Because I was watching Mark. His eyes kept moving. To the laptop. To Rachel. To the back hallway. Then to me. That was when I realized he still had one more move. He was not looking for forgiveness. He was looking for a way out. "Where's the safe key?" I asked suddenly. Everyone turned. Mark's expression flickered. Daniel looked at me. "What safe key?" "The one from my father's metal box," I said. "It was missing." Rachel went pale. "Mark has it." Mark's head snapped toward her. She swallowed hard. "He kept it in his wallet. He said George had hidden something in the basement safe. Something that could ruin the deal completely." Daniel moved toward the basement door. Mark shouted, "You need a warrant." The officer stepped in front of him. "Sir, you need to sit down." But Mark did not sit. He twisted hard, broke half free, and bolted toward the kitchen hallway. Everything happened at once. Denise screamed. Linda reached for him. The officer lunged. Mark slipped on one of the loose folders from the living room pile and hit the floor hard. The laptop bag slid out from under his coat. A small brass key skidded across the hardwood. It stopped at my feet. For a second, I just stared at it. A tiny thing, almost harmless. But it had opened the door to every lie in my marriage. I picked it up. Mark lifted his head from the floor. His face was red with rage and humiliation. "Olivia," he said, breathing hard. "Give me the key." The way he said my name made my skin crawl. Not like a husband. Like an owner calling something back. I closed my fist around it. "No." The officer pulled him fully back and told him to stay down. Daniel looked at me, then at the basement door. "Olivia," he said gently. "You do not have to go down there." But I did. Because this was my father's house. Because that safe held the last thing Mark feared. And because I was finished letting other people enter rooms that belonged to my life before I did. The basement smelled like stone and old rain. Each step creaked under my shoes. Daniel followed behind me. So did one officer. At the bottom, beneath the shelves of paint cans and Christmas boxes, stood my father's black safe. I slid the key into the lock. My hand shook only once. Then the door opened. Inside was a sealed folder with my name on it, and on top of it, a photograph. Mark standing outside an apartment building in Allentown, his arm around a pregnant woman. The photograph slipped from my fingers. It landed face up on the concrete floor. Mark was smiling in it. Not his polite smile. Not the careful one he used around my father. A real smile. The kind I had begged for during the last 2 years of our marriage. His hand rested on the woman's belly. She looked maybe 7 months pregnant. Blonde hair. Soft gray coat. Apartment keys in one hand. And behind them, taped to the glass lobby door, was the building number from Allentown. I could not move. Daniel picked up the photo gently, but I already knew what I had seen. There are moments when pain does not come as tears. It comes as silence. A wide, empty silence inside your ribs. The officer beside me said something into his radio. I barely heard him. My mind went backward, searching for dates. Business trips. Late nights. Hotel charges. The weekend Mark said he had to meet investors in Harrisburg. I had stayed home that weekend because my father had a fever. I remembered sending Mark a picture of Dad asleep in his recliner. Mark had replied, "Stay strong, babe. Almost done here. Almost done." Maybe he had been at that apartment. Maybe he had touched her stomach while I changed my father's sheets. I pressed one hand against the safe. Inside the folder was a stack of documents. Daniel opened it slowly. There were investigator reports, printed bank transfers, copies of lease payments, photos, dates, receipts, a timeline my father had built while dying. My father, who could barely eat soup, had protected me harder than my husband ever loved me. Daniel's voice was quiet. "Olivia, there's more." I shook my head once. Not because I wanted him to stop. Because I knew I had to hear it standing up. He turned one page. The apartment lease was paid from a joint account connected to your marriage. I swallowed. How long? Daniel looked at the report. 14 months. 14 months. That number entered me like cold water. For 14 months, I had asked Mark why we were always short. For 14 months, he said I was careless. Too emotional. Bad with money. For 14 months, I had skipped therapy to save cash. I had sold my grandmother's earrings when his business account collapsed. And he had used our money to keep another woman comfortable. I looked at the photo again. Does she know about me? Daniel did not answer fast enough. That was answer enough. Then the officer's radio cracked. A voice from upstairs said Mark was requesting medical attention. I almost laughed. Of course he was. When truth failed, weakness became the next costume. Daniel placed the papers back in the folder. "We should go upstairs." I nodded, but my feet felt heavy. Halfway up the basement stairs, I heard Linda crying. Not soft crying. Loud, wounded crying meant for witnesses. When I reached the living room, Mark was sitting on the sofa with his head in his hands. One officer stood near him. Rachel was by the window, arms wrapped around herself. Denise looked like a child who had opened the wrong door and seen the monster inside. Linda rushed toward me. "He needs a doctor," she said. "He hit his head." I looked past her. Mark lifted his face. There was no blood, no swelling, only panic dressed as pain. Then his eyes found the folder in Daniel's hands. Everything in him went still. "You opened it," he said. I held up the photograph. "Who is she?" The room tightened around that question. Mark stared at the picture. For 1 second, I saw shame. Then it disappeared. "She has nothing to do with this." That almost made me smile. Not because it was funny. Because the lie was so tired. "Is she pregnant with your child?" Linda gasped, but I did not look at her. Mark rubbed his mouth. "Olivia, this is not the time." I stepped closer. "When was the time, Mark? Before you forged my name? Before you tried to take my father's land? Before your mother put her name on his bedroom door?" His face hardened. "You think you're innocent in this?" The old Olivia would have flinched. She would have searched herself for blame. Maybe I had been distant. Maybe grief had changed me. Maybe I had made him feel small. But that woman was gone now. Or maybe she had finally stood up. "I think I was trusting the wrong man," I said. Mark leaned forward. "You loved being taken care of." "No," I said. "I loved you. There's a difference." That shut him up. Only for a moment. Then Rachel spoke from the window. She knows about Olivia. Everyone turned to her. My heartbeat dropped. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. The woman in Allentown. Her name is Claire Bennett. She knows Mark is married. Mark shot to his feet. Shut your mouth. The officer grabbed his arm again. Rachel stepped back, but kept talking. She also signed the Blue Creek documents. Daniel froze. I looked at the contract on the table. Only 3 signatures had been visible. Rachel nodded toward the folder. There's a second agreement. Mark promised Claire part of the developer payout. He told her he would divorce Olivia after the estate transferred. The floor felt uneven beneath me. Claire was not just a secret. She was part of the plan. My marriage had not fallen apart. It had been dismantled. Piece by piece. By people who smiled in my kitchen. By a man who kissed my forehead after lying to my face. Daniel pulled another document from the folder. His expression grew darker with every line. Then he looked at the officer. This needs to be secured immediately. Linda whispered, Mark, what did you do? He looked at his mother with a strange, broken anger. What I had to. That was the moment I stopped crying for my marriage. Not because it stopped hurting. Because he had finally told the truth. He had done all of it because, in his mind, needing something made taking it acceptable. The officer told Mark to turn around. Linda screamed again. Denise sank into my father's chair and covered her face. Rachel began to sob quietly by the window. And I stood in the center of my father's living room, holding a photograph of my husband's second life. Then Daniel touched my shoulder. Olivia, he said, there is one last recording in the folder. My breath caught. From my father? He nodded. It was marked to be played only after you saw the Allentown photograph. I looked at the laptop on the coffee table. The room blurred at the edges. I thought I had reached the bottom. Then Daniel opened the file. My father's face appeared again. And before I could prepare myself, he said, Liv, the baby may be Mark's. But the money trail leads to someone much closer to you. My father's voice filled the room. The money trail leads to someone much closer to you. I stopped breathing. For one terrible second, I thought he meant Denise. Then Linda. Then some banker I had met once at a Christmas party. But my father looked into the camera with tired, wet eyes. And I knew before he said it. Liv, he whispered, your mother contacted Mark 8 months ago. The room disappeared. The police. The rain. The flashing lights outside. Everything fell away except my father's face. My mother had left when I was 12. She packed 2 suitcases, kissed the top of my head, and told me she needed air. For years, I blamed my father for never chasing her. Later, I blamed myself for not being enough to make her stay. But she had been gone for 25 years. Or I thought she had. My father swallowed hard on the screen. She told Mark she still had a claim to part of the estate. She didn't. But she knew enough family history to sound convincing. I covered my mouth. Mark looked at the floor. That was his confession. Not in words. In silence. She introduced him to the developer, my father continued. She promised she could pressure you after my death. Mark promised her a payout from Blue Creek. I whispered no. It came out small, like a child's voice. Daniel stood beside me, steady and quiet. My father leaned closer to the camera. I am so sorry, baby. I wanted to protect you from this. But secrets protect the wrong people when they stay buried too long. That sentence broke something open in me. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough for the truth to get in. My mother had not come back for me. She had come back for the land. For the money. For the one thing my father spent his life keeping safe. Mark tried to speak. Olivia, I didn't know she would. I turned to him. Don't. One word. That was all I had left for him. The officer guided Mark toward the front door a few minutes later. He was not handcuffed at first. Then he pulled away and started shouting that this was a family matter, that I was emotional, that everyone was taking advantage of my grief. So they cuffed him. Linda screamed his name from the living room. Denise cried into both hands. Rachel stood by the window, shaking but still there. And I watched my husband leave my father's house under flashing police lights, carrying none of the power he had walked in with. By morning, Daniel had filed emergency notices to protect the estate. The Blue Creek transfer was frozen. The lender opened a fraud review. The developer backed away so fast, it almost proved guilt by itself. My mother called me once. I let it ring. Then she sent a message. I was going to explain everything. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I blocked her. Not because I was cruel. Because explanations do not heal wounds that were opened for profit. The weeks after that were ugly. There is no clean way to untangle betrayal. Mark's lawyer tried to make me look unstable. Linda claimed she had only signed paperwork she did not understand. Denise said she panicked because Mark told her we would lose everything. Claire Bennett hired her own attorney and disappeared from Allentown before anyone served her papers. And me? I stayed in the house. At first, I slept on the couch with every light on. I kept my father's watch on the table beside me. Some nights, I woke up convinced I heard Mark's key in the door. Other nights, I sat in the kitchen and cried so hard I could not breathe. But slowly, the house stopped feeling like a crime scene. I took Linda's sticker off the bedroom door. I folded my father's blue blanket and placed it back on his bed. I put his watch in a small glass case near the fireplace. And one rainy afternoon, I walked down to Blue Creek alone. The water was high from a storm. The old wooden swing my father built was still tied to the tree. Weathered. Crooked. Holding on. I sat beneath it until my shoes sank into the mud. For the first time since the funeral, I let myself miss him without also fighting for survival. That was when Daniel called. The final will had been confirmed. The house was mine. The land was mine. But more than that, my voice was mine again. Months later, I sold Mark's business debt out of my life through the divorce settlement. It cost money. It cost sleep. It cost pieces of who I used to be. But I did not lose the house. I did not lose Blue Creek. And I did not lose myself. People think betrayal starts when someone cheats. It does not. Sometimes it starts when you ignore the first small lie because loving someone feels easier than questioning them. Sometimes it starts when you let people call your instincts anxiety. Sometimes it starts when you hand over your decisions because you are tired, grieving, or scared. I still live in my father's house. Not because I need the rooms. Because every room reminds me of the day I finally stopped letting other people occupy my life. And sometimes, late at night, I stand in the hallway and look at the bedroom door where Linda put her name. There is no sticker there now. Only the wood my father chose years ago. And the silence he left behind. A silence that no longer feels empty. It feels like a warning. And maybe, finally, like peace.